Oliver, come on.
Hello and welcome. Happy to have you here with me today, preserving some of the very last produce from the garden this year. I still have leeks, carrots and herbs that we'll use for fresh eating this fall. I have done a variety of preserving this year, for example pickling, which I have shared in a previous video, making jams, drying and freezing. Here I am picking a lot of tomatoes in September to make into crushed tomatoes and pasta sauce. I get warm inside seeing these moments and I miss the warmth already. To make the pasta sauce, I also use bell peppers from the garden along with zucchini that actually isn't mine. I got these from my boyfriend's sister while they were away, and I am also using a yellow onion, and the tomatoes I am using are both slicing and cherry tomatoes. I just pick through them and I use the softer ones for the crushed tomatoes since they will be crushed anyway, and for the pasta sauce I am picking out the more firm tomatoes. I am chopping them and coring them to put it all into this roaster pan. I really like having my fridge and pantry stocked with bases like this. We go through a lot of crushed tomatoes in this household. And it was really fun to make my own, even if it didn't last very long. I have made tomato soup and other super delicious meals out of the crushed tomatoes. And the pasta sauce was an experiment, just so I could use up all the produce before it went bad. And I have used some of it as a base to recipes, and that worked great. I kept it simple so I can adjust the flavors to the recipe that I'm cooking. And my boyfriend also eats a lot of pasta, so it's perfect to keep a quick meal in the freezer for this winter. You can see that I'm mostly picking cherry tomatoes for the pasta sauce. This is because they were a lot more firm. Cherry tomatoes tend to be a little bit more sour, and I thought that would fit better into the pasta sauce rather than into the crushed tomatoes. I got some bad luck with bell peppers this year. I could only harvest a few tiny bell peppers from one out of the 4 plants. I did have a pretty small garden area to plant this year since we moved in this summer. It went way better than expected. Just look at all these beautiful tomatoes. But next year, when I have the new garden area, I'll probably get bell peppers growing out of my ears. I just showed you the size of this zucchini, it's crazy. I did also get a lot of zucchini this year, but none of them were this big, so I will show you later in this clip that I saved seed from these. I'm gonna have to ask my boyfriend's sister what variety these were so that I know that next year when I go to plant them. They were also very meaty and delicious texture. There weren't a lot of seeds, so I feel like they are a beautiful and perfect candidate for my garden next year. The last thing I will be adding to this pan is the onion, and I know it looks overfull and that it won't work, but it cooks down a lot. I do put a little bit of salt and olive oil to it as well, and to the crushed tomatoes I added just a tiny bit of olive oil to keep it from burning. I had them in the oven for about 180 degrees Celsius until it went soft, probably like 40 minutes to an hour depending on your oven. And here I am saving some seeds. I didn't save any that was cut by the knife, of course. I only chose the bigger intact seeds. I lay them on this piece of paper towel to let them dry and store them like this. Adding them to paper like this removes moisture from the seeds more quickly, usually saves days of drying. It also acts like a storage, since all you need to do is fold the paper once dry and keep it in a cool and dry place. This is another variety we picked from her garden. It was also super large, so I am using it for dinner. And when I already had everything there, I saved seeds from this one too. I am stirring the vegetables halfway through, and here you can see how much it cooked down already. This is actually the next morning. I let it sit in the fridge overnight to let it thicken, and that worked super well. I start by blitzing the tomatoes in this mixer, and you'll notice that I kept all the skins and seeds. This was by choice because it was only enough for 2 jars or so, and I didn't want to go through the effort. I am also adding tomato paste to make it even more rich. But when doing bigger batches or for long-term storage, you'll definitely would want to remove the skins and the seeds before. I also do end up adding all this liquid that's inside the roaster pan. That is all just delicious goodness. These are sterilized jars. I made sure to sterilize them well since I wouldn't be canning these jars. I only store them in the fridge, and we did use them within a month and it was fine. I am wiping the mouths with a paper with a little bit of vinegar to remove any residue so that the lid will screw on tight. I really liked the texture that the tomato paste gave the crushed tomatoes, so I added some to the pasta sauce, and I am using a hand mixer for this. I am not mixing it completely like I did with the crushed tomatoes. I am still saving some bits and pieces inside. It adds a bit more texture to the pasta. I ended up with 2 jars to keep in the fridge and 1 container for the freezer. It felt really good to get these produce into use and to have homemade crushed tomatoes and pasta sauce on hand. I can't wait for the next season when I can properly can, preserve and store in bigger batches and for long term. Two things that has been growing out of my ears are cucumbers and chilies. You have seen me preserving cucumbers by pickling them and make into drinks. We also ate a lot of it fresh, and in this case I am doing more pickles. We love pickled things and I give some of it away to family, and I am starting with this cucumber and chili pickle. This was our favorite so far. I haven't opened all of the jars yet, but it was really good. We ate them with dim sum. I have eaten it with poke bowls. So I'm excited to have a go-to pickle recipe under my belt that I use 2 ingredients from the garden. Or actually 3, since it uses chives too. I almost forgot. In the jar next to it, I added whole black peppers, dill seeds and mustard seeds. The brine I am using is always the same. It's the 1, 2, 3 brine. It's easy to remember. It always works. It's 1 part vinegar, 2 parts sugar and 3 parts water. I usually add a little bit of salt to it as well. I pop the air bubbles and close the lids. These also go into the fridge. In this one I am doing a more classic pickle with cucumber sticks instead of slices. We will eat these with burgers or sandwiches, and for this one I did a salt brine. It uses more salt than sugar. To season, I used yellow onion, bay leaves, mustard seeds, dill seeds, and dill from the garden. While I had the chilies there and the knife ready, I chopped the rest of them to store in the freezer for this winter. I didn't use any gloves here because these ones weren't super hot, but it burned underneath my fingernails for many hours, so you'll see me later in this video using gloves. I made a fourth pickle out of cam because I've already shown this in another video. It's the classic one with the dill flowers. These following clips are from this month in October. I shared a video where I put the garden to bed for the winter and I managed to save a few tomatoes that were good still. Most unripe, I didn't want to waste them. And I have always wanted to try a green tomato marmalade, so that's what I did. The flavors I am using are vanilla and ginger. On the stove I have some brine for the chili pickle that I will get to after this. I think that the colors of mixing some green, some yellow and some red were stunning, but there were a few bad spots that I removed. I just cut them into smaller pieces and I will add them to the saucepan. While the brine is cooling down, I am cutting the chili using gloves this time. I poured the chilies and the brine into this bigger jar at first thinking it could work, but I quickly realized that it was too big, so I transferred it into the smaller jar. I have also added garlic and I kept this jar outside the fridge for 2 days because I have experienced garlic turning blue and kind of a soapy flavor when I stick it right into the fridge. I am adding the sugar, a little bit of salt, a squeeze of lemon, vanilla powder and ground ginger. I would use fresh ginger and vanilla beans if you are to make a bigger batch of this. I let it simmer on the stove for a good 20 minutes to soften and thicken the tomatoes. I then proceed to pour it into sterilized jars and stick them into the fridge. Although this is a very small amount of preserves, I am still happy with it. It was all very quick and easy, and we easily enjoy this marmalade the whole fall with cheese and crackers. I am tasting it now and it had thickened beautifully and it was very, very delicious, and you don't need much of it. And these pickled chilies might last us the whole winter since we preserve chilies in so many other ways. Chilies, chilies, chilies. So many chilies. I haven't eaten this much spicy food in all my life probably, but I'm really into it. I do like spicy food on an occasion and I know it's really good for you, and I went with a kind cayenne pepper this season, but I am a huge fan of jalapenos as well, and there are so many chili peppers out there that I want to try. I want to make hot sauce and salsa with Sugar Rush peach peppers next year, and I still have a handful of fresh chilies in the fridge, but these ones have been drying on a paper towel for a few weeks, and today I am drying the last bits in the oven to really evaporate any moisture still in them. These are turned into chili powder / chili flakes. Another great way of preserving is of course freezing, and in this drawer we have chanterelles from our forest and some tomatoes from the garden to enjoy this coming winter. I will use the tomatoes as a special treat when making a fancier dinner, or for moments I want to reminisce the summer months when I'm sick of the winter.